Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Podcast. We are still on the special edition of the big issue. And of course, today's edition is basically on the ongoing judgment being delivered by the Presidential Election Petitions Court on the presidential election held on February 25, 2023. The candidates of the major opposition party, the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, the candidates of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, and the APM had approached the tribunal seeking to invalidate the election that produced President Bola Ahmed Tinubu as former President Muhammadu Buhari's successor. Well, it had been a very tense atmosphere in Nigeria, as the mood had always been that of high expectation. And of course, the tension had been high, security tightly beefed up, and Nigerians are completely glued to their TV set to watch the judgments being delivered in the matter, which is being televised live. And of course, we're beginning to see most of the decisions taken by the 5 justices of the Presidential Election Petitions Court. Chibuzo, you are welcome to this program.
Thank you, Raj.
You see, we have a situation here at hand, and of course, Nigerians are actually watching. And of course, securities are outside there very heavy and tight, and they're actually preempting the outcome. What supporters of all these political parties might want to do in terms of reaction. But let's begin to see some of the decisions taken by the court. As it is now, we are having feelers that the court has already ruled that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, is at liberty to define the mode of transmitting election results. Don't forget that that was part of the matter presented before the court, where the opposition parties are accusing INEC of delay in transmitting this result and uploading them in the portal. But see what the court say on the issue of substantial non-compliance with the provision of the law, especially as it borders on the non-transmission of result sheets to INEC result viewing portal. The tribunal said that there is no law that says INEC must transfer or transmit the results of the election from the polling unit electronically. According to the court, this law simply empowers INEC to decide the means of collation of results. You understand? That has been struck out, and I think that should form a major part of the case. Because you remember during the election, INEC, the Labour Party, the PDP, accused INEC of having a skeleton in the cupboard, which is why they were finding it difficult to upload this result to the RUVEP or IREB, according to ITIS. Let's look at it. If you look at it critically, the Electoral Act does not make provision that says that it must be electronic transmission of result. It were the opposition candidates that were now making a mountain out of a molehill in this case, and that the court has just done. And this was one substantial part of the case. What do you think about this particular ruling by the Presidential Election Petitions Court?
Well, thank you. First of all, let me start by saying today is a day a lot of people have been waiting for. It's more like a D-Day as far as the next stage of the electoral process, because this is all part of the electoral process until you get to the Supreme Court, where the matter finally ends, or if the petitioners choose not to take it further, we are still, there's still that halo of elections hanging, hovering over politics. So this is the next stage and a critical day in the electoral process. That said, so far, the judgments of the appeal courts has turned or clearly goes, in the direction of the respondents, which is INEC, the APC, Tinubu, Shetima, in that, in no particular order, but as the sequence provides.
The respondent in the
Yes,
case.
yes, as the sequence provides so far. We've seen what he did with APM.
If that was in a regular court, the respondent is the same thing as the defendant.
Exactly. So you've seen how we trashed the matter about Shetima, whether there was a double nomination that has been taken up. Seen what it has done also with the 25%. We've also seen what has been done about what it has ruled about the one we just asked now, whether INEC is mandated to use the electronic thing, transmission of election results and all of that. But from the onset, there's always been a question of, I'm talking broadly now, there's always been a question of what you can prove, not what you think you know, or not what you think is the moral thing to do. It's about what you can prove. And some of the claims made by, in particular reference to labor, the use of the electronic device, that's the PVAS machine, in transmission of results and uploading the IREV and all of that. Yes, the circumstances, that led to the glitch and all of the drama surrounding the glitch, where you have the Senate and House of Rep results being uploaded, and that of the presidential not uploaded on the same day, in the same time frame as promised by INEC. All of that drama, I think it has come to a culmination where the court is saying it is at the discretion of INEC to decide whether or not to go through that process. So it is not necessarily compulsory that they must, even though they promised to. You see, and I think that is where the opposition is really hinging their claim on that. You promised us, you vowed, or let me not use vow, we promised, we assured and reassured, at different levels, at different platforms, that you were going to do this.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, our player is already on our portal.
But at the end of the day, that didn't happen. So we hold you account for trying to be mischievous. But now the question is, did they provide sufficient evidence to prove that, one, INEC had malicious intent as to why it didn't upload the results? Because it is not a question of what you can prove. It's a question of what you can prove and what you are claiming. You understand? So it's really, interesting to see how the judiciary has really trashed some of these
most of the cases.
Yes.
Well, that is even, by the way, I think by now it is becoming very clear to the opposition that their case before the election petitions court is nowhere close to being validated, because I think on point of law, the judges are trashing them one after the other. For instance, now, apart from the mode of the transmission of the result, the court also said that the Labour Party and its presidential candidate, Obi, failed to prove that Tinubu was convicted in the United States. And This is what the court said. The court ruled that the Labour Party and Peter Obi failed to prove that President Tinubu of the APC was convicted for money laundering in the United States. The five-man panel of justices, led by Justice Haruna Samani, ruled that no record of criminal arrest or conviction was established against Tinubu by the petitioners. That shows that what the opposition parties were actually dwelling on were things they see being posted on the social media. For instance, there are reports from bloggers. We have bloggers. We have some kind of overzealous online newspapers who, at the end of the day, based on hearsay, will always publish stories that are unconfirmed. And that is what the opposition relied on to now go before the court. But there was no substantial evidence. You go to court, and of course, what the court, how does the law go? The law says the onus of proof lies in the accuser. He who accused must be the one to prove that yes, the allegations I am giving against this person are true. And how do you prove them? You bring concrete evidence, not things that are based on speculation. I think it was on that basis that the court decided to strike out the case of allegations of Tinubu's conviction in the United States.
Well, I think it comes back to what you can prove, like you rightly said. It's about what you can prove, not what you think happened. It's about presenting concrete facts to back up. Now, what the opposition was relying on with regards to the case about forfeiture, which was equally admitted by, the counsel to Tinubu, that yes, there was such an incident, but it was not criminal. And that too, because that was the defense that they put up. So they did in some way admit that yes, there was such an incident that happened with regards to forfeiture in a particular case.
But
that it didn't amount to a criminal forfeiture. And it was not established that he committed a crime.
Convicted for a crime.
That he committed a crime in the United States, and that, of course, he had visited the States a couple of times, and nobody, apprehended him and all of that. So to that extent, the court is also echoing that. Yes, you have said there was a forfeiture and all of that, but you were not able to prove that it was a crime. That it was a criminal, thing that happened. And as such, the court is saying, no, it is not, what you have presented is not strong enough to back what you are demanding for in that light.
Well, I can remember how this particular kind of issue started popping up.
Yeah.
I think it was in the build-up to the campaign where we started hearing cases of sleaze and some wrongdoings, corruption. Some Nigerians may have not even heard them before. For instance, it was during the build-up or during the campaign that all of a sudden, one fellow who claimed he was Atiku's aide appeared from nowhere and accused Atiku of using something vehicle. What is that there? Special something vehicle.
Yes. Special
purpose vehicle to loot the country dry.
Yes.
And the man had to come, even releasing phone conversation between him and Atiku, where Atiku was explaining how he was able to do that at the end of the day. And I think it was that even the media campaign of Atiku were now replying back, saying, you, a drug baron that was convicted in the United States. These were where all these things popped up. At the end of the day, they were just said merely based on just what could be heard. no concrete evidence. And it is very, very surprising that after all the election, people could just go to court and tender those things like evidence. And at the end of the day, when it's time to prove it, you don't have anything concrete to show that what we are saying is true. I think the court is aware of that. And that is why the judges now had to strike it out. And what did the judge say? Let's look at what the judge said again. That, according to him, he said that no record of criminal arrests or conviction was established against Tinubu by the petitioners in the court. Okay, for instance, let's look at another aspect of one of the ruling again given by the court, although this one is now in favor of the Labour Party candidate to be. The court declared that APC petitions challenging Obi's membership of the Labour Party is incompetent. Justice Abba said that membership in a political party is an internal affair. The tribunal also went further to touch on the issue of non-joinder of Atiku Abubakar, who came second, and wonder how Obi and the Labour Party's petition could be effectively determined without joining the candidate who placed second in the polls. And you see, I think this idea of election malpractice, rejection of the 2023 election, I think it is the Labour Party that is crying more than the bereaved. That is a party whose candidate came a distant third. They have made it look as if Obi, and we will come back. There's another ruling here. The latest one, the judge they delivered now. Make it look as if Obi was even the man who would have won without that, leaving the candidate who even came second in the poll. And the judge, the tribunal said, they said on that issue that there's no way they can determine such an issue without joining the candidate who even came second. That is where the obedience even made a mountain out of a molehill in this case. Made it look as if.
But no, this is a legal issue. And this is a claim. People make claims, and people first of all, I think it has to be established that everybody has a right to make demands and express grievances when they feel what they went in for. If they feel the process from their own point of view isn't as delivered as promised. Now, Obi has a right, let me put it that way, to claim he won. But whether he can prove it, is another matter. The same way Atiku has a right to claim he won. But whether he can prove it is another matter. The president Tinubu has the right to say, I won this election. But in his own case, he's already the winner, so he doesn't have to prove. And that is the way the system, our justice system is. It is you that is alleging, that have to prove what you are claiming.
You are claiming.
You understand? So I wouldn't say it is an unfair system, but it is what the system is. You understand? Because whoever is there already is coming from a point of certification from the institutions that provide such platform. So it is left for Obi and Atiku, and that has been the point all along, to prove beyond reasonable doubt whatever evidences you are present. It's left for them to say, okay, A, B, C, D, and E has happened, and we are not comfortable with it, and these are the facts on ground back why we think, But so it's a question of, if you are presenting those facts, they have to be concrete enough before the judge or before the panel, who will also dissect it and see whether it is strong enough to. So, but again, it's a judgment. People are like, and this election. I think we should even backtrack a bit. I think in a long time we've never had an election, a presidential election. And these were things we discussed in the build-up to the election in this studio, as to how, and I think a lot of people also echoed it, as to how divisive and intense the campaigns became at some point. It was really, really toxic. And so lines were clearly so deep as to there was no the meeting points where people could sit and say, okay, fine, these are the rules. Whichever way we go, these are the rules, these are no-go areas as to the rules of engagement were clearly blurred. They were blurred, and so it became so sharp and so intense. And that has led to a point where people started expressing certain, and in fairness to those who expressed concerns about the judiciary too, when people saw certain judgments preceding what we are having now, I'm not talking about what we have now. I'm talking about judgments that were read out, and when people had some senior lawyers expressing doubts about judgments being made by some judges, it fueled such suspicions about the judiciary. And so a lot of toxic environment, a lot of toxicity was thrown into the environment, into the political sphere. So I think it is important for us to put these things in context in the build up to where we are now. Because as I speak with you, I've been on the internet, particularly Twitter. My brother, it is in fact
the commentaries.
Oh my God. And that is
even why
something has to be done.
That is even why sometimes the social media has not helped us in this country, because most people will want to infuse their own personal opinion and make it look as if that is the general norm. In the process, they begin to hoodwink gullible Nigerians to begin to believe that what they are doing is, for instance, severally, the Supreme Court justices, especially on these election petition cases, have always held certain matters to bear. They try as much as possible to point out the fact. For instance, the court, according to the Supreme Court justices, is not a Father Christmas that should be granting reliefs, including even those that were not sought for in the first place. And if you check what happened at the tribunal, that is exactly what the justices ruled about some of those forensic analysis tendered by the Labour Party. The court rejected the report of the forensic analysis tendered by the Labour Party, saying that they are either made during the pendency of the case or by an interested party. For instance, there is this European Union report on the polls. As soon as that report came out, while the case had already been filed, the Labour Party now ran with it to the court and tendered. Now, one would have said, on the basis of just a mere report by a foreign observer, the court will now say, yes, it is. But you see what the court, see the wisdom of the court is striking this out. The court argued, the court said, it was not even tendered by the official of the European Union itself. And a different party now went to the court tendering that very report of European Union. And on what basis is he using that now to claim that that alone has shown that the election was marred by irregularity? Because what the court will need is the man who tendered it, is the man who made that report is the man who is claiming irregularities. He is supposed to be the one tendering it before the court. Because that is only when the court sees him face to face and says, your report said there is irregularity. There were irregularities during the 2023 presidential election. Oh yeah, where can you give us instances of such irregularities? And at the end of the day, it behoves the man who accuses to prove the allegation is leveling against that person. That should even bring us to, for instance, now what the court said again, the presidential election petitions court, said that most of the claims of the widespread irregularities were just generic. For instance, you don't give particulars of this polling unit where you say the irregularity took place. See what Justice Abba said. A presidential election held in 176,866 polling units in 774 local government areas. For such an election, it would be improper not to specify where these irregularities took place. The petitions only made generic allegations, a general kind of allegation. And of course, see the judge, and I quote him, pleading must set out material facts and particulars. In the instant petition, there was no effort to prove specific allegation, particulars of complaint. And the law is clear that where someone alleges irregularities in a particular polling unit, such person must prove the particular irregularities in that polling unit before that petition can succeed. And the court further said the petitioners did not prove the particular polling unit where the election did not take place, or did they specify particulars of polling unit where there are alleged complaints of irregularities. It was only in one instance that figures were given of alleged suppressed votes, and we all know that elections are about figure. LP alleged that INEC reduced their scores and added it to APC votes, but failed to supply particulars of what they actually scored before they said reductions. Neither did they supply the polling unit where it happened. You see how the law is. You can now understand that you could make all your claim, but what the law is actually looking for is concrete evidence, facts that at the end of the day you point out, oh yeah, see the polling unit, see what we had before the results were reduced. Those were not even presented before the court. And you just make up a general allegation, throw it in the air, and then expect that the court will now rely on it. These are the kind of things that most times, if guys not taking, you see Nigerians beginning to believe what they are just hear or mere hearsay. Yes. Without come show us how this happened. I think that's what the court is doing in this case. And I think what Nigerians should be informed about is that sometimes the court does not rely on subjectivity. The court is always objective, just like in journalism we are expected that whatever we are reporting must be objective.
Exactly.
Without opinionating or without claiming. And especially when it has to do with the court of law, where issues are expected to be made based on facts and concrete evidence given. That too has been struck out. But the surprising thing is that after this case, Chibuzo,
yes,
you will still see supporters of the opposition party still coming out to saturate the social media, saying, "Oh, the judges had been compromised. The judiciary has been." Yeah.
That's the irony about our electoral system, particularly in a democratic environment like ours, where there's a sense of the winner takes all mentality. Then more so where you have a campaign that was so divisive and so, because the build up to this is as important as what we are seeing now. You understand? Because I think it became so sentimental, sentimental.
It was not even issue based.
Exactly. So it's for me. I'm sad, but not surprised that we are having the kind of sentimental expressions, sentimental intensity, trailing this whole process. Of course, like you did say, you still see people saying, "Oh, what the court has done is unfair. We were robbed. There were too many things." But again, there's a culture that should a culture that should kick in, the culture of being able to prove what you claim, even when you think it is what you know. You should be able to say, yes, this is what I know, and these are the facts that I have to back up my claim. But thankfully, there's the Supreme Court, that they can also, exactly, and maybe the upper court will be able to review some of these claims that they had, because you can be sure that after now they will insist that the court didn't do justice to what we presented, that they turned the blind eye this way or
the court was misdirected.
Exactly.
And the misdirection occasion a miscarriage of justice.
It's an opportunity will present itself for them to go to the Supreme Court to test again whether or not, what some of the things they presented before the courts and the way the appeal court interpreted them, is in order or otherwise. But I do think that this should provide us with an opportunity to reassess, because it stems from our politics, an opportunity to reassess the kind of politics we play and set a tone towards suiting frayed nerves, as we move on. Because I don't think we can afford to go into the next phase of going to the post-election phase, let me use that expression, with this kind of animosity and it is not going to be healthy for the nation. It is not going to be healthy for the developmental needs that we should be having at this point. So all the political actors should be able to put something very clear at the back of their minds, that regardless of what happened at the polls and at the courts, there is need to start converging. Not necessarily, I'm not saying there should be a one-party thing or anything, converging in the sense to ensure that some of the needless cracks and needless expression of sentiment that are not based on how to ensure, the system becomes productive are shaded off. You understand? And to a large extent, it might start perhaps with the party in power showing that sign of good faith and ensuring that these other opposition, guys key into that kind of arrangement, so that we begin to heal some of these wounds and try to make people understand that, okay, this is how things work in the interest of everybody. And I think I will key into why the government should start as soon as possible to ensure that the evidences or the dividends, like we normally say, of quality governance begin to play out. Because in the absence of that, it will continue to fuel this notion of we were hard done because of by the election, and the judiciary has let us down. Because as we speak now, the judiciary is really on the spotlight.
Seriously
under the spotlight. Seriously under the spotlight. So, and a way of relieving them of that kind of pressure will be for the executive to step up its game and begin to do provide the kind of quality governance that they should provide, so that people will begin to see, okay, these people do have good intentions for us. Yeah. Not just about winning election. Yeah. Because the notion out there is that, politics in Nigeria is just about power grab power and so these are some of the quick fixes that can happen, so that they begin to suit this. Because I can tell you, people are really the division is real.
Of course,
the division is real.
And Chibuzo, you even spoke about the executive doing all it can to actually give quality governance. At the same time, too, we will also talk about the opposition. Opposition to step up its game.
Absolutely.
And what we should see is constructive opposition.
Absolutely.
Opposition that will contribute to governance.
Absolutely.
Putting the government in power on its toes.
Absolutely.
Not that kind of rancorous and malicious opposition.
Yes. And opposition that is just purely based on pull down.
Because they're not in power, they will not succeed.
They should be able to come up with alternative ideas.
Yes.
It should be a question of, you have this idea, we think it is different. Based on facts and based on, clear thinking. Not just because we went this way, we must go the other way to ensure that there's division. No. Yes. The opposition should put itself in a place where it says, okay, they are saying the poverty rate has increased by so what did they do to increase it? What could we have done better to make that figure different from what they are posting? And send it to Nigerians. And that's the direction we should be going.
And true, from the way their lordships, the 5 justices in the panel of the presidential election petitions court are puncturing some of these cases before the court, and the evidences provided by the opposition, the way they are puncturing it seamlessly, is even something that we should begin to look at. The crop of lawyers we have, and that is where the Nigerian Bar Association has a role to play, because the lawyers too are not even helping their clients. They are not helping matters. As soon as the elections were over, there was a cartoon.
Yes.
In one of the newspaper where we saw one of the lawyers telling the wife that, honey, just relax. It is our turn. The elections are over, and Obi and Atiku, they are going to court. Now, what does that mean? After all the spendings during the campaign, and the politicians and political jobbers making a field day from the proceeds of campaign, now the matter is coming to court. That is where the lawyers too will begin to make their fortune from the electoral process. That shows that Nigeria's election is all about making financial fortune. It has nothing to do with getting the right leaders to power. Because of that, if the matter comes before the court, the lawyers who are being asked to represent their clients, like the opposition, instead of guiding them properly and say, you don't see, you say we should go to court on this, but I might fear you don't have a case. Because whatever the case is, the matter before you here is so frivolous that even the judges will not waste time to strike it out. The lawyers will not guide their clients. The politicians tell them the truth. They gather all these things, present before the court. Anyhow, there should be a case in the court. Well, because they want to make money out of it.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
There is of course, you can call it a workshop.
The workshop.
You can call it a workshop. But again,
that is the point.
But again, let us even look at some of the issues that were raised in this process, this petition process. I wouldn't really say, because if you look at the way, I think the bulk of what is being said is the inability to prove beyond reasonable doubt. For instance, has INEC really explained to us what the glitch means? They admitted, they are the ones that brought up the concept of glitch.
That is a glitch.
They actually told us what amounts to glitch and the generative cause of that glitch. Have they?
I think they said that, I think I remember when they said this glitch.
Yes.
I think when it came to the inability of transmitting those results to the IREV,
yes,
and they say it was
what is the
glitch.
explanation that they gave?
I think at a point I heard they were even trying to say it was a technical issue. These are machines.
In other clients.
These are machines.
In
and
other
of course,
clients.
we're talking of network.
In other clients, an inquiry would have been made. Because you have to explain beyond reasonable doubt. You are not doing it because you were giving monies. You are giving monies to do that job. And that so they should be able to explain
those monies. It was expected that the process has to be
exactly
transparent.
Be able to explain. So these are some of the issues. It's not the question is not necessarily because the things they brought were over all round frivolous. No, there were some frivolous issues, but there were some real key issues that required INEC to explain. You understand? So I wouldn't just dismiss everything the opposition has brought forward in their petition. Of course. But because there are some critical issues, and particularly INEC. My focus is on INEC really, because INEC, if you make a lot of promises, I'm not talking about whether or not you are mandated to use this technology. No, I'm talking about if you make promises, you were funded heavily to ensure that a certain process works, and it doesn't work. Of course, you should know that it will raise suspicion in an election like this, in the build up to it, all the promises you've made. And so you should be able to explain that, okay, this, or even do an inquiry and make a report present as to why that has happened. Good enough. INEC has said they're going to do their audit and explain. So maybe during they can tell us.
Understand what
so we wait to see what they tell us when that happens. But again, it is also good that I support that people test the provisions of the law. You understand? I support that people test provisions of the law so that it helps to grow our jurisprudence and make our democracy much more robust. So if there are things that are not clear or people feel, oh, I don't think this is right, I don't think this is consistent with what the law presents for, they should test it in court. But my concern is such that it doesn't become distractive, and you can see what is happening in the US as we speak.
Of course.
Even the president is being taken to court and all of that.
Of course.
These are the ways to grow the democratic
process.
Test it at in the proper place it should be, so that everybody gets to see.
Well, Chibuzo, I think we've started getting comments from our viewers, and they too are trying as much as possible to lend their voices. They want to let us know what their mind is. And I think some comments are trickling in. Let's just see what we have here. And this one is coming from Bodam Sambo. Bodam Sambo is saying nothing, didn't expect otherwise. He said nothing, we didn't expect otherwise. They will not rule against a sitting president. They have never done. That is the conclusion. But can we just say that is possible? Because at the end of the day, it's all about what we are saying here. Not about whether they have ruled against a sitting president or not. Yeah. It's about whether the opposition will always get their act right while approaching the court. Because just like I said, it still boils down to what I said about the Nigerian Bar Association, cautioning some of their lawyers who at the end of the day, instead of allowing the wheels of justice to progress in a manner that justice will be served
and seen to be served.
These lawyers will carry anything in terms of court processes and present before the court. And some of them do it too much in a hurry, because at the end of the day, they want that case to go before the court. And when they now go, they put most of their clients, especially the politicians, especially when it has to do an election case, on a tight corner. Because some of these technicalities in which this case has been struck out are caused by the way the lawyers bring them to court.
Yeah, I wouldn't totally blame the lawyers. You just explained what happened with the INEC. If the institutions too that ought to play their role, play it the way it ought to be, I'm sure it will reduce a lot of legal issues. For instance, you see the way if elections hold in states and SEC holds election for local government, we all see what happens. You understand? So if somebody decides to challenge it, you won't blame the person.
The one of SEC, I don't understand.
So institutions, I do agree that lawyers too can be frivolous, but I also think institutions should be impartial in the way they do their things, and all that they have to. I'm not saying institutions should be impartial on the one hand, and also be to conduct their acts competently to avoid, at least reduce the measure of suspicion that should trail whatever thing they do. So that way, it reduces that window for people seeking frivolous. So as much as lawyers also want to play that up, the institutions too should also do their part. So it shrinks that space for frivolous,
Well, I just want to disagree with both them that it is deliberate that most of the election petitions and as borders on presidential election will always go the same way. It is not necessarily so. If you check critically, even at the level of Supreme Court, because if the matter before the Court of Appeal as the judgment is being delivered now goes in favor of the sitting president, the opposition parties will still appeal to the Supreme Court, of course, which is the final, of course, Court of Appeal. But at the end of the day, even the Supreme Court have tried their best in one way or the other to really caution the Independent National Electoral Commission. And the court had even taken steps where, at even a point we saw a case where it was even close to removing a sitting president. It was the Chief Justice of Nigeria. Well, before we come back to that, we have Sanchez Emeka here too.
That's an interesting issue.
Sanchez Emeka said, I thank God we are all in Nigeria. We will suffer it together. 8 years is not 8 days old. And of course, Ebu John is saying that Nigerian has no constitution.
I think that is too sweeping.
That was
that's too see, these are the emotional expressions that some of us frown against.
And how will you blame them? Okay, for instance, now at this stage where they now struck out the issue of this electronic transmission of results. And we say INEC should explain these glitches. What the court used in striking it out, see, borders to the amendment of the Electoral Act by the National Assembly. What the National Assembly did was to throw everything open and give INEC that liberty to choose what to do.
Use or not.
Now the court is saying that INEC is at liberty to define mode of transmitting election result,
Yes.
whether electronically or manually.
Yes.
So even if you talk of glitches, that is what the court has just said. If in the process INEC discovered that transmitting it electronically will create some difficulties, it has to fall back to the manual
I
process.
agree, but what I'm saying is, if you say you were giving monies for that, if you say there's a glitch, tell us there's a glitch. Explain the quality the glitch. You know, like times they would have done, and not you are not doing. You didn't do it with your personal money. You are giving
taxpayers' money.
Exactly. So you should explain, and it is expected that you would have anticipated. There's an anticipatory thing about it. I'm not referring to intention to compromise here. No, that's what that's not what I'm saying. I'm referring to perhaps a poor preparedness and lack of anticipation. That's what I'm speaking to. You understand? If the thing becomes so intense that it happens like this, a proper explanation ought to be given. Because it will douse such suspicion. If you recall, on that very day, it took a while before INEC explained that there was a glitch. Because people started noticing, and when the whole place started going up and people started raising suspicion, that they came out and said it was a glitch. And even after that, it took a long time before we discussed this thing at length here. You understand? So it created a lot of suspicion.
And that is why I tell you, Chibuzo, it boils down to our institutions. They are not firm in what they do. And it boils down from the amendments of the Electoral Act by the National Assembly, throwing these things open to the independent national level, keeping them at liberty to get the window to say we can either do this or we do that. And now the hands of the courts are tight. Because what the court saw and in interpreting the Electoral Act, they are trying to say, look, INEC is at liberty to do, it's INEC that determines this. So if they were transmitting electronically and they see that the thing will not be possible again, they can fall back to the manual. That is where the court cannot rule otherwise. Because they are now ruling based on point of law, what is in Nigeria's constitution and the Electoral Act. But now, still going back to what Godam was trying to say about the fact that presidential election always go the same way, trying to make the court look as if they're just deliberately making it go that way, even if the opposition has a case. But let's be very frank, right? The Supreme Court, just like I was saying, had gone to a point where it was something close as if they are going to nullify an election. That was the election of 2007. The election that produced former President Yaradua. It was just an escape by a whisker because it was 4-3. The judges were divided. And I think it was just it took on the Chief Justice of Nigeria to take side before that matter Yaradua was able to escape. And don't forget that election, Yaradua had to say, yes, I agree that the election that brought me into power had flaws. It was in that judgment that if you see the way the court bashed INEC, Justice Oguntade bashed INEC to a point that he said INEC decided to turn the electoral process into animal farm, where some animals are more equal than the others. That is the point. So at the end of the day, you see, sometimes the judges they try as much as possible to look at the facts of the case, and where they know that even the electoral body is at fault, they give it to them. So it is not really the case that because presidential election in the country have always gone the way where the sitting president will have the day. It is because the court necessarily wants it to be so. It is the way our laws are made. It is the way the Electoral Act and the country's constitution is being, for instance, in the last amendment of the Electoral Act, we expected that the National Assembly would sit down, look at these laws, make it very strict in a way that at the end of the day, the rules will really guide properly. But sometimes it is not so, and that is even why the judge has been able to, the judges of the Court of Appeal are now saying that it was INEC. What is now saying is that, look, the law says that INEC is at liberty.
I am not a lawyer, but I've had a couple of phrases that they normally, and I'll just say them here. I hope I'm right.
No, of course.
In expressing them the way that there's a spirit of the law, and then there's the law. And there's also this expression that law is made for man.
Yes.
You know. So at times I do not envy these judges when they sit.
And even the Supreme Court, most times they will tell you that, look, the courts are rise to do substantial justice without recourse to technicality.
Yes. When they sit like that to make such pronouncements, there's a lot that goes into it. I also know that there is now I'm saying this without prejudice. They also consider stability of the nation. Yes. Because it's quite fundamental. They consider stability. But how do you marry stability and justice? That is where the wisdom comes. How do you marry them in such a way that, and so that is why the pressure goes back to the institutions, which is usually the executive and the legislature, to ensure that laws
are properly
made and that they are properly implemented. So that by the time it comes to the judiciary, all of that burden wouldn't be so much. It will become easier for them to ensure stability.
And without shrouding most of these laws in ambiguity. Exactly. Because some of the laws are shrouded in ambiguity. Exactly. And of course, in interpreting them, you give the court, you even put the court at liberty to interpret them in that way. Exactly. That is why they always tell you that the law is an ass. Well, we don't have time. Time will fail us to actually go on and on. But the matter is still ongoing, and the Presidential Election Petition Court is still delivering the judgment at her as it is. But whichever way it goes, that is healthy for Nigeria's democracy. And of course, I thank our viewers for keeping tab with us out there. And of course, I will not fail to thank our very vibrant in-house analyst, Chubuzo Kaibe, for addressing the big issue. Thank you, sir. Join us same time tomorrow for another edition of this program. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.